All right, guys, I want to talk about the reason why I can jump off a trampoline, land on the ground, and do a depth jump. This same reason is why parkour athletes can drop off 15 feet and land without even touching a weight. And also the reason why I've seen my 8-year-old nephew jump off the top of a swing, land, and walk off like a boss and ask where his juice box is at. There's kids everywhere in every playground who can do stuff like this, yet the meathead in LA Fitness who can squat 2.5 times his body weight, he's squatting 400 pounds, he can't do these things. So you guys have probably heard me refer to this type of training as ninja development, right? We're developing ninjas. And one of the key components here is co-contraction. A lot of the injuries that happen in sports happen on the loading phase. They happen on cutting and on landing from a big jump. It happens in the first 50 milliseconds. Now, 50 milliseconds is not enough time for your muscles to really kick on. So if I'm fully relaxed and I just land, 50 milliseconds is not enough time. Your muscles need a way longer period of time to maximally contract. And so when we're doing all this strength training stuff and thinking that that is going to protect us on the court or on the field, it's just not. Now, it plays a role because it helps us build a stronger structure and we can build stronger ligaments and tendons, and that stuff is all good. But at the end of the day, what's going to really protect me on the field, because you guys have seen these guys with jacked quads and hamstrings and glutes and they still are tearing their ACLs, right? They're still tearing their Achilles. No amount of muscle is going to protect you. Skill protects you. And what I mean by skill is co-contractions, pre-activation. Right before my foot is hitting the ground, a skilled athlete, somebody who is skilled at dealing with forces, will kick on the right muscles at the right time. As I'm going to land, I'm kicking on the gastroc and the soleus and the ant-tib and my inverters and everters. And it's like I'm bracing for impact. So now when my foot hits, it's already contracted. So I'm already in a good braced position in that first 50 milliseconds. And that's what keeps the ankle stable, right? I have the same thing going on at every joint. So the same thing at the knee. I got my quads, I got my hamstrings co-contracting at the right time, right before the foot is hitting the ground as I'm going into a cut or when I'm landing from a jump. So if no amount of isolated training and no amount of slow strength training is going to actually build this proper coordination, right? There's intramuscular coordination, there's that muscles coordination, and then intermuscular coordination. So how is the ant-tib coordinating with the gastroc and the soleus? How are my quads coordinating with the hamstring? This is all a very coordinated skill. It's not about strength. It's not about brute force. It's about coordination. And so in a lot of our programs, we do a lot of multi-directional plyometrics. In the speed code, we introduce this with some barefoot freestyle. So we take off our shoes and you just set the clock. So you could start at like 3 minutes and you're just going slow and you're just freestyling, coming up with different movement solutions. It doesn't matter what it is. You're just coming up with a bunch of different movements. And what that's doing is it's really giving you the variability that you need. And so you're learning how to co-contract before that foot hits the ground. In a world that's dominated by sagittal plane training and one-dimensional strength training, we got to get the feet and the ankles exposed to a bunch of different movements, and not just linear, not just lateral, not just transverse, all of these things at the same time. This is ninja development. Now our feet learn how to supinate, how to pronate. Our lower leg muscles are learning how to work together to accomplish the movement task in a safe manner. We're learning these co-contractions. We're learning this pre-activation. Now, the reason why we just start with basic freestyling in the vert code is because we're not lifting our feet high off the ground. And so ground reaction forces are a little bit lower, and we can gradually ramp it up until we get to 100%. Now, once you get to 100% there, we move from more change of direction agility now into multi-directional plyometrics. Now, at the most basic level, you have your basic pogo hops, lateral, rotational, linear. That stuff is great, and that's a good way to get into it. But at some point, you got to get into more unplanned movement. So I would rather you almost turn on a song and dance to that song and introduce a bunch of different directions.
My happy guy. Oh, just a happy guy.
Because now my feet and ankles are actually being exposed to forces in all the planes of motion. And that's when you start to improve the skill of co-contraction. Remember, in a game, cuts are like snowflakes. Every one is unique. Every cut that you make is different than the previous one. Every single one. You might not be able to tell by the naked eye, but your foot positioning might be slightly different. The amount of drag you have in the back leg might be slightly different. The amount of torso lean might be a little bit different. So in training, we have to expose ourselves to all these different force vectors so that we can build the skill of pre-activation and co-contraction. So if stage one was our sort of low-level freestyle change of direction, and stage two was more extensive plyometrics, you can go from planned to unplanned to whatever you want to do. Eventually, if you want to turn on a song and just dance to that song with different hops, that is so unbelievably good for building those lower leg muscles. And it's also really good for tendon health as well. So your Achilles tendon is going to like that a lot. Now, eventually we start to get into traditional plyometrics. Maybe I'm dropping off a box and I'm jumping over a hurdle and I'm rotating in the air. Maybe I'm jumping over, rotating, and I'm landing in a 1-2. I have one drill that I use where I drop off a box, I jump over, and then whatever position I land in, so I'm jumping over the hurdle, whatever position I land in, I have to jump from there. And so that challenges me to all these different landing and jumping positions. I wouldn't be able to do that if I was just doing regular depth jumps or just doing strictly lateral hops. So with drills like this, we're building that skill of injury prevention. But not only that, we're still hitting higher forces in more specific time frames than anything we can do in the weight room, right? If I'm landing and I'm jumping, that's actually going to be way higher force than your heavy squat in the weight room when we look at peak forces. So you're hitting higher peak forces and you're also doing it in a more specific time frame that's actually going to translate to our normal ground contacts on the court. So to wrap that up, should we do strength training at all? The answer is yes. We should still be doing some strength training. We can get some general tissue adaptation, some tissue tolerance. We can get our ligaments and tendons and bones stronger with traditional strength training. But at the end of the day, the meat and potatoes is skill. Injury prevention is a skill. Athleticism is a skill. Athleticism is not about pure force. That's one section of the equation. It's about coordinated force, okay? Being able to relax and contract at the right time and then relax again. And if your goal is getting faster, changing directions better, getting bouncier, and preventing injuries, then we should focus on this skill aspect and not just the strength aspect. Go become a ninja.